Hey everyone, on this episode of Noon, I'm excited to introduce you to Andy, a physician's assistant with a remarkable journey that spans from military service to his current role as a flight PA for a medevac company. Andy's career has been defined by his unwavering commitment to help others, both with serving his country and in the realm of healthcare. Notably, he's a strong advocate for supporting individuals dealing with PTSD, a cause close to his heart. Join us for an engaging conversation as Andy shares his experiences, from aiding fellow soldiers during his reserves to his crucial work as a flight provider. This episode contains insights into healthcare, some of his time in his service, and the importance of mental health awareness. Let's get started. All right, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today on the Noon podcast. I appreciate you coming on today.
Oh, of course. I'm stoked to be here.
I'm super stoked. We ran into each other, I don't even remember. Was it El Paso?
Yeah, it was at Millionaire when both our crews were refueling there and had our chance encounter, and now here we are.
Here we are. And you actually know my last partner, which is funny. It's such a small world.
That's one of the things I really like about, working in the air ambulance community and the kind of pre-hospital community, especially when you're in the same state. But yeah, turned out, so after we had our run-in, I guess to backtrack a little bit, a couple months ago, I got a new vehicle and I was selling the old bike rack that was on my previous vehicle and put it on Facebook Marketplace. And this guy who actually lived a couple blocks down hit me up. He was interested in buying it. And I kind of squinted at his profile photo and I'm like, that looks like that may be an A-star in the background there. And so we met up to make the deal. And, this guy with this slick back hair, butts on the side, he had all these stickers on his car. And you could tell right away, like, this is a guy I'm going to get along with. It was all fly fishing stickers and mountain bike stickers. And it turned out that he worked for Classic as a flight nurse. And we became buds, had a lot of common interest. And a couple weeks ago, after our chance meeting there, I was telling him about it. I was like, "Hey, I'm going on this podcast, 911 Nonsense, with this flight medic Sam." And he's like, "Well, that's funny. That's my old partner."
Yeah.
So yeah, small world, man.
It is a small. He's one of my favorite partners, and he's definitely been one of my bigger supporters throughout this whole adventure. It's been really cool. He pushed me a lot in the beginning, and he's helped support a lot of the ventures that I've done. So really, really cool. But Andy, let's go ahead and get an introduction and who you are, what you do.
Yeah, you bet. So my name is Andy French. I'm a flight PA. On the Army side, we take on the title of aeromedical physician assistant, and I work for an air ambulance company based out of Southeast New Mexico. And I also work part-time at a couple of different ERs in Albuquerque as an emergency medicine PA. And then on the side, I also still serve in the Army Reserves as a PA currently. And I became a PA in 2019, so just in time for COVID and to learn what burnout is, right? As we all unfortunately learned.
Yep.
But yeah, it was rough, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was a rough couple of years, man.
But prior to that, I had received my paramedic license in 2014. I spent some time working in EMS, and then made that crossover working as a paramedic and a couple different ERs in different parts of the nation here. But not as much time spent in healthcare as some of your guests or as yourself, because this was kind of my second career. I worked as a military intelligence officer and then a psychological operations officer on active duty for a long time in the Army. And I'd also done some other things on the side, worked as a raft guide. I was a ski instructor for a little bit out in Washington. So kind of all over the place, deciding what I want to do when I grow up. But I'm super happy to be here, and I'm appreciative that we ran into each other and learned about this podcast.
That's super cool, man. It sounds like you've had quite the interesting ride in a very short period of time, which is still really cool. Can I ask, since you have paramedic experience on your side and PA, like, What is the difference in your current flight job? Like, what can you do more as a PA than you could as a medic?
So for our company specific, some of the things and services that we offer that you probably won't see with most air ambulance services is we have the ability to do field thoracotomies, lateral kymphotomies. We can do field amputations if need be. So yeah, and that's it's kind of a scary one. We haven't had to do one yet. And most of those things require we still have to call our med director and let them know what's going on. And we kind of bring that in-hospital background to the back of our fixed wing or rotary wing aircraft. And then when you pair that up with our flight medics, it's just a combo made for success. I found that our flight medics come with a lot of experience on the tangible side. You know, when you really need that IV, you don't want me doing that. You want my flight
Yeah.
medic because it's going to take me a couple sticks, right?
Yeah.
But when we're interpreting that EKG and trying to figure out what's going on and figuring out the pathology behind what we can do, that's kind of where we come into play. And it just really it gels well. It makes this really effective team, and we were pretty much considered like a doc in a box. So where we work, a lot of rural hospitals out there, and if you're at a very small ER that maybe does not have the best providers, or they need another provider to help stabilize a patient before we fly them out, we can come and bring that along with whole blood and ultrasound and a couple other really fun toys.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. We don't carry blood, but we can transport blood. The issue is a lot of the times when we're transporting patients who need blood, it's because there's not enough blood at the facility that they're at. So,
Right? Yeah. And we don't carry a whole lot. You know, we'll carry 1 unit of whole blood and two of liquid plasma generally. But sometimes that's what you need, especially on a scene call. You know, that
yeah.
patient that may need that.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, dude.
Yeah, it's been an awesome job. I'm very fortunate because there's not many critical care, air transport systems out there that bring aboard PAs, and even sometimes NPs. You'll see physicians sometimes with them, which we do have physicians and we do have NPs as well that work for us. But yeah, I've been very fortunate with this company that I'm working with.
Yeah, yours is one of the only companies I've seen with the upper level providers, and I think I've met a couple of your NPs and a couple of your physicians as well. That's how I knew, your services offered that, which is really cool. It's a unique pairing, especially here in the state. You know, we don't see it. The typical pairing is either nurse paramedic or nurse RT. You know.
Right. Yeah, and there's a learning and education component to it as well that goes both ways. That flight medic that I'm paired with, they're learning a lot about how a clinician, a PA, a doc, an MP thinks and looks at what's going on, and maybe some tools for assessment and things like that. Whereas we learn a lot from the medics too. You look at it, how many times a PA has intubated versus a field medic, especially a flight medic. I guarantee you that flight medic probably has 5 times as many, tube drops compared to yours truly. So they know all the little tips and tricks to, first attempt success rate and messing with the monitor and adjusting the vents. So that education and learning really goes both ways and makes both components of that team even better.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You were telling me a little bit about some of your history, before we started recording the podcast, and some of the stuff you've had multiple, it sounds like multiple deployments.
Yes, correct. Yeah, I've made a couple trips to Iraq, one to Afghanistan, one to another Middle Eastern country that we'll leave out, and then I was very blessed in that I got to travel really all over the world with the Army. I lived in Korea for a year. I've done missions in Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, Thailand. And then I'm actually getting set to go out to Africa this year, to Tunisia for an exercise.
Wow.
So it's been wild. It's been a wild trip. Sometimes I forget all the places I've gotten to see and experience. And again, very, very lucky that I was afforded those opportunities.
Yeah, for real. So are you still active duty or?
No, so I left active duty in 2014, and that's actually when my healthcare career interest in it was kickstarted. but I did decide to stay in the reserves, and I still serve in the Army Reserves. I actually work with a unit pretty much right down from where I live here in Santa Fe, and it's one of the best jobs I've ever had. You know, kind of like we were previously talking about. My sole job at this unit I'm with now is just to train combat medics. And as a PA and as somebody who worked as a paramedic, you couldn't ask for a better job. It's absolutely awesome. I really love being able to see these kids grow and learn more and see their interest in it. Cause, you know, we were both there at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, being EMT and seeing what the paramedics do and be like, I want to do that.
Yep.
So it's been a lot of fun. And I think coming up this year, I'm going to be moved to a different unit out in Texas to take a more leadership role as our medical battalion executive officer, which is basically I'm getting hired on to herd cats. So I'll be sad to leave, but you know, you got to move on and move up, right?
Exactly. Congratulations, man. That sounds like a pretty cool title and a pretty cool job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. It'll be good. It'll be good. Positive mindset, right?
That's right. That's right. Positive mindset in all things, right? So, have you had any experiences where, I mean, you're super smart. Clearly, you've moved up the ranks and you've done a lot of things. Have you had any experiences where you were embarrassed or kind of put into your place?
Too many to count.
Too many to count.
Too many to count. I am definitely a person that I may seem smart. I think I talk well, but I have to learn by experience. And a lot of times that is the hard way. And you know, on the medical side of it, I've definitely had some close calls where I've almost made some pretty major mistakes, as we all do in
Mhm.
healthcare. Nobody is perfect, right? And they've been great learning experiences. You know, when I first started as a PA, I pretty much went right into emergency medicine, and it was what I always kind of wanted to do when I decided I wanted to get into healthcare. My father is a emergency medicine physician. He was a Coast Guard flight surgeon for like 37 years, so he also
Wow.
flew. So, you know, that's those are looking back now, I realize why I do what I do and why I wanted to do it. Even though in the younger years I was like, I never want to be like my dad. I'll be nothing like him. Well, here I am.
Yeah, here we are,
but
right?
uh but yeah, I had a near miss once where we had a it was a young guy. He was about 35 years old, and he was a diabetic, and he was having some like buttocks pain, and he had what looked like just like a pilonidal abscess, or it could have even been like in the buttocks, but obviously looked infected, very red, very tender. But he was a pretty, vitals were stable and everything. I'm like, oh, this is easy. Let's IND this. And so got everything up to go ahead and do a incision and drainage. And I was just going to pack it with gauze, and literally had this guy with his pants down and on the table and everything set up. And I had the scalpel out. I was like, something just doesn't seem right about this. And my ultrasound skills at the time weren't great, so I didn't feel comfortable ultrasounding it. So I did what every good emergency medicine practitioner does, and I threw him into the old donut of truth there and got a CT scan. And it turned out this guy had raging Fournier's gangrene.
Oh.
Yeah, you would never know from the external look, but the CT rarely lies, you know. And man, if I had cut into that, I would have had every surgeon in Albuquerque up my ass asking, "What the hell were you doing, dumb PAs? Jeez, I can't believe you did that." So, yeah, I've had a lot of close calls and a lot of times where I felt stupid, absolutely. But you know, it's how you deal with it, I think, is the important part there. When you feel stupid or you had a close call, if you can analyze that and see how it's going to change your practice and take measures to make sure that you don't do it again, whether that's, education or talking it over with, maybe somebody more experienced. That's the makings of a good provider. But there's some people that have those near misses and they blame it on the monitor, they blame it on the equipment, they blame it on everything else except looking at like, well, maybe this was my fault and maybe I could do this better. And I've had some missed innovations too. So good thing they pair us up like the flight medics like that I was talking
So,
about.
so one of my missed intubation attempts, and I don't remember if
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about this previously or not, but we had an older lady who had coded and she had just finished eating breakfast. So went in, I got the opportunity to intubate, and it was just a messy airway. Like she didn't have any teeth, which made it easier, but she had like eggs and potatoes, like full chunky
Oh, yummy.
airway. Yeah, so we suctioned out, we scooped out what we could. I went ahead and made the intubation attempt and ended up in the esophagus. And you know right away when you're in the esophagus because it comes up the tube, right? So I
Yep,
was at the
yep.
head intubating. I had a firefighter kneeled right next to me, and I saw it coming up the tube. So I turned the tube to the right, and it just got all over
Oh
this guy's
no.
leg. And I was like, I'm so sorry, bro. Like, I'm so sorry.
Oh
But I,
man.
I left the tube where it was, and I went ahead and made a second attempt, and I was successful the second time. But I felt really bad for that firefighter because he had to, he had to go shower after that.
You literally fire hose down the firefighter with vomit.
Yeah, with eggs. It was eggs and orange juice and all kinds of
Oh,
stuff.
oh
All the good
man.
breakfast stuff,
Oh, that's gnarly. Yeah, so even using that the salad technique really wouldn't have helped. Sounds like it was chunky.
It was chunky. It was pretty chunky, and
Oh,
you know, but it was
yeah.
good.
Hey,
It
that
was a
that
good learning.
yeah, you got the second attempt, like, and
Yep.
you got it in. That's all that matters. That's gonna be me one day with my obsession with gas station burritos. I'll be the guy that's being intubated and having eggs and potatoes and
Oh man, I love gas station burritos. You can't go wrong with those.
oh no, they're so good. They're
They're
good.
so
They're oh,
good.
I want one right now.
Have you tried? I'm gonna name drop here. Have you tried burritos on Stantes yet?
No,
Oh, you're
where
missing
is it
out.
down in Albuquerque?
It is. There's a couple locations here actually, and some down in Las
All right,
Lunas.
burritos on Stante. I'm writing it down.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite burrito places here, and it's just like a little hole in the wall place too. Like so good.
Yeah, my go-to is one down in Roswell. It's New Mexico Burrito Factory, and it is officially a gas station burrito because it's inside of an Avon. And man, it's unreal. I'm not gonna lie, I ate two of them on my way back this morning from work.
I mean, whatever you got to do to make it healthy, right? Like, if you're gonna
I
do
tell
it, do it
myself
right.
it's healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
got eggs and protein, and
all natural, organic.
there you go. Even better. The tortillas are probably made in Albuquerque. I don't know, but
Hey, I honestly I don't care where they're made because they're that good. They could be
yeah.
making them, on top of the dumpster out back. I'll still down two or three of them.
I'm gonna have to reach out to some of my friends down there, and then maybe I'll catch one the next time we fly down there.
Yeah, there you go. I dig it.
That's fantastic. What are some of your favorite missions or calls or life situations, whatever? Like,
Yeah, what I guess what I'll kind of talk about, just kind of keep with the theme of your platform, what you got going, which
sure.
again I think is super important. Talking about the behavioral health component of providers that work in healthcare and first responders. Whether that's pre-hospital, in hospital. It really is a problem, and I think it's starting to get more awareness. I think podcasts like yours are definitely helping with this, especially now that we're in top 10%, right?
Top 10%,
Um,
brother.
hell yeah, baby. But I guess to start off with, when I was a much younger, more naive young man that really hadn't had a lot of real world experience, I had this really skewed perspective on behavioral health. I didn't really believe it was a real thing. I thought people who committed suicide or fell into these depressive episodes, that it was a choice for them. And it's embarrassing to say this now. I've obviously learned a lot, especially working in healthcare and dealing with some of my own problems. But I thought it was like a sign of weakness, that if you couldn't get over your depressive episode or whatever was going on the mental health side, that you just had a weak mind. And as I started experiencing more and going through more, and good old karma came and bit me right up in the ass too, started dealing with my own mental health problems. I learned the hard way, and obviously that perspective changed. And things kind of started or culminated after my first deployment in Iraq. And I had experienced a lot of firsts on that deployment. One of them was really experiencing grief and the loss of somebody from tragic circumstances. I had older family members that had passed away before, but it didn't really have the same effect on me. But I had a good friend. His name was Daniel Hyde, First Lieutenant Danny Hyde, and just one of the nicest guys you would ever meet. Very smart. He was a West Point graduate. We were in the same battalion, and everybody. He was that guy that he was your friend. He was your peer, but you also looked up to him because he just had a very strong leadership presence and knew how to talk to people. And I had, at the time, we were still doing year-long deployment, and I had just come back from R&R. I had gone home, and then I think I spent a week in like Puerto Rico. And I flew back to one of our bigger bases called Cobb Spiker, and I was sitting outside of where I was temporarily staying at the time, waiting to go back to our smaller operating base. And all of a sudden, this truck pulls up, and it was one of our warrant officers. And one, I didn't know how he knew where I was or that I was there, but he said, "Hey, get in the truck. We got to go to the cache," which was one of the cache is an acronym for our military field hospital. So we drive to this field hospital, and as we're coming in, we see one of the medevac Blackhawks coming onto their landing pad, taking this guy off, and you could just tell he's a mess. I mean, kind of blood draining everywhere. And it turned out it was Danny, and he had been on either on a convoy or on some mission, and some enemy fighter had thrown an RKG grenade at his truck, which is a grenade that has the ability really to blast through really thick armor, and it just melts it, and had gotten him really, really good. And he was alive, I think, for a good portion of the transport, but at some point he coded, and they were not able to get Danny back. So he unfortunately was killed in action. And I had never had somebody that a good friend or seen another young person who had so much life left to live and so much more to offer, all of a sudden tragically, you know, die. And I really didn't know how to deal with it, how to compartmentalize with it. And again, going back to what I said, I had this notion that, you know, PTSD, depression, those things, that's just, again, if you can't get over that, that's a weak mind. So I did what unfortunately most of us do in, law enforcement, EMS, military, stuffed it down. Just keep pushing it down, and don't worry, it'll go away. And later on, it would kind of come back to haunt me, and I would start seeing symptoms when I got back. But the other thing that was new to me was it was really my first time experiencing what hypervigilance feels like and what that can do. You learn really quickly, and come to the conclusion that, oh yeah, hey, wait, I'm in a country that is very serious, is very dangerous.
Yes.
I could get shot at, blown up, at any time. And then when you start seeing that, oh, this is actually happening to the people around me, reality sets in. And it's hard to turn off. You are just constantly looking for a threat. It's hard to let your guard down. And we were on a patrol once, and I was coming around the corner of a building, and all of a sudden just heard like a little dust cloud in front of me. I was like, I wonder what that was. That's kind of weird. Maybe somebody threw a rock or something at me. And then two more. I'm like,
jeez,
well, these things are getting closer. I'm like, oh, I'm getting shot at. Okay, all right, that makes sense. I see what's going on now.
Took a second to figure it out.
Yeah. Your first time, it's hard to realize what's going on, but after that, then you know what it is. So yeah, obviously, like most young men and women, really, at what point in high school or college or whatever you may be doing, or you can experience that, unless you're unfortunately like a very underprivileged, dangerous part of the nation.
Yeah.
And so you're in that mode, stuffing down the grief portion and constantly dealing with this hypervigilance for 9 months, a year, some people 15 months. And then they're like, all right, you're done. Go ahead, go home.
Yeah.
And you can't just turn it off, right?
No.
And what's funny was that I found that those two different things kind of resulted in different symptoms. Dealing with trying to turn off that switch of being constantly, on alert, I would find that I was becoming extremely anxious. I had like no patience anymore, very hot-headed. I I almost got into a fight with some poor old lady crossing guard. I think my brother was with me, and I was stationed in Hawaii at the time, so we'd come back to Hawaii, and I had this little '97 Jeep Wrangler, and top was down, and we'd cruise around in it and bounce all over the island. And at a four-way intersection that was by a school, and stopped and then turned. And there were kids that were walking down the sidewalk to use the crosswalk, and the crossing guard hadn't quite gotten there yet. And she kind of let me have it. She was like, "You need, something like you need the weight," or yelled something at me. And I stopped the Jeep and just got in this shouting match with this poor old lady who probably volunteers her time to do this to ensure the welfare and safety of small children.
Yeah.
And here's this young dumb guy rolling through on a Jeep, top down, getting in a fight with her. I mean, man, so stuff like that, constantly looking for an argument, for a fight, and drinking a lot,
Oh, I'm
drinking a
sure.
lot. So yeah, a bunch of unhealthy ways of coping because I didn't believe I had a problem. Again, I didn't think this was a real thing. Couldn't maintain a relationship, and if I had more healthy outlook on what mental health was at the time, then it probably wouldn't have bubbled up into what it was. And I think I did what most people in that career field and what I think people do that work in EMS and law enforcement too, it attracts a very specific personality type, I believe, which is the type of people that don't like failure. They want to be successful, and they want to be at the top of the class, the best EMT they could be, the best paramedic. And so when we have problems, these types of people, the answer is to just put your head down and row. Just dig your heels in, push forward until you are successful.
Yeah.
And the problem there is I feel like a lot of these types of people equate PTSD and depression, or maybe other behavioral health related disorders like adjustment disorder, to being a problem that you could just push through. And I was one of those. And so my answer to help resolve that, what I thought was, well, I just got to get back to a combat zone and do it all over again. If I feel this way and these things are going on, then I just didn't do it right the first time.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, let's get on another deployment, and this time will be different. It's got to be that, and again, lots of drinking, and so the next place I found myself in was Afghanistan. And then yeah, and I'll kind of take a pause there. I could go into Afghanistan too, because that really turned things up a notch.
Did it? Yeah, no, I'm glad that you talked a little bit about hypervigilance because it's something that we've discussed in previous episodes. You talked about it in a good way where you're in this constant environment, and then at the end of your deployment, however many months it's been, now you're told, well, go home. And it's crazy because we experience hypervigilance in EMS too, right? Especially out here in areas where there is, a high prevalence for violence. In the ambulance, you constantly had to be aware because we didn't have bases where we could go in and sit and hang out while we're waiting for a call. We were expected to stay in our trucks. So you're in your truck for, 12 hours and having to constantly be aware of what's going on around you because sometimes you're parked in not great areas of the city. Then at the end of your shift, 12, 14, 15 hours, you're expected to go home and, settle down and relax after that and then get up and do it again the next morning.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not just, I think, on kind of the civilian side, we equate it to crime, but it's not always just crime. Responded to like a motor vehicle accident, you're always in danger on the side of a highway,
Mm-hmm.
or depending maybe where that scene call is. And the other part to it is, when I was overseas, I had a weapon. I could shoot back.
Yeah, that's true.
They don't really give EMTs weapons, and it's not just a 9-12 month deployment. You're talking about being in a state of hypervigilance for however long you're working, EMS, maybe that could be four or
Yeah, and the
five
911
years, you
system. And
know?
it's not just, yeah, not just for EMTs, but working in the ER too. You had to
Oh
be
yeah.
aware, especially, and I'm sure it's accurate for a lot of hospitals, but having worked at the trauma center, you had to constantly be aware of your back door and your front door and, be cognizant of what's coming into trauma because you never know what's rolling in.
No, that's a great example. Like we were saying, it's not just crime related. It's maybe a hyper vigilance for being able to know what's going on in the surroundings, to be able to save somebody that may be severely injured,
Yeah.
or working in a super busy ER. If you're sometimes these providers are picking up like 7, 8 patients at a time, and it only takes a minute for one of them to really start decompensating and circling the drain. And so, yeah, I think it's applicable to so many different things, not just combat and not just military. So, yeah, I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. I've gotten my fair share of fights in the ER too. Um, but usually we're pretty fortunate. There's usually, some nurses or medics or RTs that are much bigger than me, and you can't keep them out of the gym. And I
Yeah.
just use those guys as muscle. Yeah.
That sometimes that's all you can do, and it's I've made quite a few nurses and physicians upset in the last couple of years that I've been working in flight because there's such a high demand for psych transports. High
Mm-hmm.
demand right now because our ambulances are so short staffed that they can't transport out of city or out of state. So the option is to go
Right.
with flight. And they're upset because I'm telling them, just because you have this guy on a hold doesn't mean I'm going to allow him in the airplane, right? So, or she, if that person is upset, they're aggressive, they're violent in any way, I'm not taking them in an airplane. If they don't want to go in an
Oh
airplane,
no.
I'm not forcing them into an airplane. We don't have the 7 or 8 people that you have if something changes rapidly with this patient.
Yeah, and your odds of a safety incident occurring with a patient like that skyrocketing compared to treating them in hospital.
Right.
And you do exclusively fixed wing.
Yes. You're not going to get my fat ass in a rotor. Sorry.
Well, I mean, and that's who they like to call for the psych stuff too. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
nope,
it's
rotor won't
nuts.
take it. It's got to go on the
No.
fixed wing. So you probably get a lot of that. Yeah, that's dangerous and that's hard.
Yeah, it's a high percentage. If I had to guess, I'd say somewhere between 30 and 50% of our call volume is psych related.
Holy cow! Wow.
I think more companies are accepting the psych transports, but our company is known for transporting psych patients.
Yeah. Yep. And we all know the sending facility always lies about how that patient has been. Like, oh, he's been
Yes.
nice and friendly and
Yes.
calm and redirectable. And then as soon as you get him on that aircraft, it's the gloves are on, baby. You
Yes,
know?
yep. Well, and the bad part too is that a lot of these facilities won't accept those patients again if they're aggressive, if they have to be restrained either physically or chemically. So if that patient can't walk in and talk and be able to hold a conversation, they're not going to accept them. So if something happens in flight and you end up having to restrain that patient either physically or chemically or both, right? You end up
Yeah.
buying that patient another ER visit and likely another ER visit that's not in the same city where you pick that patient up at.
Oh my God. What a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's frustrating. And then yeah, the cycle just continues. That's unfortunate. And then where those people go? Eventually they probably just go back out on the street or wherever they were before. Yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah, it's crazy. Something needs to be done for more mental health help in the state. After we closed down all of those units, it's just gotten so bad.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think too. I understand that in the 60s and maybe part of the 70s that there was so much bad shit going on in these mass institutions that they had. But I think a lot of the problems that we see in the world today, um, can all be almost all be boiled down to mental health issues
Yeah.
and a result of the lack of resources because institutions like that don't exist anymore
No.
on a mass scale. But I mean, look at what just happened in Albuquerque not that long ago, right? That drive-by shooting, or that it was a road rage incident where the guy ended up shooting into the car that he was arguing with and killed that poor 11-year-old child. When you boil that down, I mean, to think that is the right answer to an argument because maybe somebody moved into your lane or whatever maybe have started it. I mean, that's a behavioral health issue. Thinking that is a logical reaction.
I know. And not the first kid that's died in an automobile argument here in Albuquerque.
Yeah, right. Or school shootings too. To think that's a logical answer. It's I think it's all behavioral health, and I think it could be correlated back to not having mass institutions like that to provide inpatient and outpatient services on a broader scale.
Or not making it available financially for people even if they're not doing inpatient,
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think, we say we have a gun crisis or we have this crisis or that crisis. I think really what we're dealing with on a national scale is a behavioral health crisis,
I agree with that.
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate. And, there's no resolution in sight, unfortunately.
Yep. Yep.
So do you feel comfortable talking about maybe one of your worst calls or your worst patients?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I do love sharing this stuff, and because I think sharing, cases and experiences like this is what helps people maybe get the courage to get help or learn how to cope with things that they've seen or done. I think one of the worst ones I saw, and I wouldn't say it's the worst. I've kind of noticed this trend on some of the other people you've had on too. The gore, the trauma, that doesn't necessarily bother me. I think the cases that really get to me are where some type of emotional connection has been made between you and the patient. And I think one of the worst ones was I was working in the an emergency department in North Carolina as a paramedic, and there was an automobile accident that came in with three traumas. It was a mother, a 3-year-old boy, and then it was the male drunk driver that had hit them. And the mom came in as a code. The male driver had come in with bilateral open tib fractures. Basically, feet went into the base of the floor mats there, and then went out. The feet
Ugh,
exited the chat. And
yeah.
Tibbs and Fibs were saying hello. Um, and
Gross.
then it was the first time I had actually seen a priapism as a result of a neuro injury. This 3-year-old boy had pretty much complete right-sided hemiparalysis and an active priapism. And the mom, they were not able to resuscitate. The drunk driver obviously lived, but seeing this poor 3-year-old kid who could see his mom, by the way, because she was just in the bed next to him in our resuscitation bay, and seeing everybody work on mom there, and just the terrified look on his face. I mean, I think what gets to me is when you see something like that, putting yourself in that patient's perspective, especially thinking back to, you know, you don't know anything about the world when you're a 3-year-old kid. Now,
No.
all you know is that you are absolutely terrified. You don't know what's going on with yourself. You can't move your right side. And mom is obviously very, very badly injured. And the whole time, him just asking for his mom, wanting to be with mom, uh, that one hit pretty hard. And that was kind of one of the first times I came to the realization of how fragile we are. Anything could happen at any time. You don't know. I could walk outside and, part of the space shuttle could fall on me and kill me.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't know. And, I kind of came to those same conclusions over deployment too. Hey, tomorrow could be my time. That may be the day I step on that pressure plate IED, and I'm out of here, red mist. So that one struck pretty hard. And at that time, again, I think I had started to come to the realization that I was dealing with some BH issues from seeing and dealing with things like this. And this had happened when I had just gotten back from Afghanistan too. I had left the active duty and was living in North Carolina, and that was a pretty rough deployment because I'd seen a lot of similar things. It was like my experience in Iraq, but like Spinal Tap says, turned up to 11, a lot more kinetic, a lot more dangerous, and a lot more death. One that I'll never forget is we were attached to a Afghan army battalion. It was me and 12 dudes, and our job was to assist and advise them in conducting missions and work with them. We were on what was called a security forces advise and assist team, and they don't have all the great toys and armor and everything we have. And this place it was in Maiwan province, which is home of the Taliban, and it was just riddled with IEDs, so improvised explosive devices. And we had a ANA Humvee get hit by an IED, and one guy was injured, another guy was KIA, but this IED had just taken out probably a foot of his torso. It was, I mean, you could literally see through him, and it was nothing but gobbledygook just in the middle there.
It's a good description.
And again, that's the best way I could explain it. And again, it just made you realize, man, that could be me tomorrow. And it just, again, it hit on, like we're talking about, those hypervigilance notes. And yeah, that was another good one. That's about the time I realized that, behavioral health is a real thing. That was the deployment that started to change my perspective on that. But when I got back, I fell into the same pattern. I did go see a counselor once, and I was like, all right, I'm cured. Yeah, I think a lot of people make that mistake. I was like, all right, I get it, man. I'm so much better. All right, time to go back to drinking.
So now that you've had all of these experiences, and then you went to the counselor, and you clearly recognized that was not the answer, was one visit. What have you done to make it better for yourself?
So it really didn't happen until the last year, maybe the last 2 years. I realized that this is something that's not going away. This may be a problem that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life, and I need to fix it. I need to find a way to cope with it, and I need help doing that. And for me, it was I do see a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a counselor on a pretty routine basis. Medications have helped me. Maybe that's not for everybody, but the cognitive behavioral therapy was definitely needed. And I think just realizing that this is something I have to do to get better, or learn how to live with this. And then stop drinking. That helped. That helped a lot. And also, taking better care of myself. I think I have a theory that pre-existing medical problems, the symptoms from those, worsen when you're also dealing with behavioral health issues. Pain becomes worse when you're depressed. If you're diabetic or hypertensive, when you're dealing with BH issues, you don't really take good care of yourself and eat right and exercise, right? And so, like most people that work in healthcare, I didn't have a primary care provider. I thought I could just take care of myself. And so getting with a primary care provider and getting a good physical and taking care of some health issues that I had let go for several years, I think also helped me get over that hump and learn to deal with this a little bit better. I had been dealing with ADD since I was a child, and never saw anybody for it, never took any medications or anything. And I noticed a profound difference once I had been evaluated for that and actually started taking something to help treat it. That had a huge impact in improving my mental health and dealing with my PTSD and depression. So I think taking care of yourself is a huge component to this as well, and taking care of some of your other medical problems and just trying to live a healthy lifestyle.
So where can we sign up for you as our PCP?
I don't do primary care.
No.
I'm emergency medicine for life.
I mean, that's technically PCP, right?
Yeah, yeah. I guess these days it definitely is. I can't tell you how many blood
Definitely.
pressure and other PCP related medications I've prescribed for people. Yeah, it's we really have an issue here in New Mexico with a shortage of primary care providers, and it's hard to get in, to see
Yes,
somebody
it
for that.
is.
I totally understand. 3-4 months to see a primary care provider. I mean, that's tough. What do you do in the meantime?
Yeah. Yep.
It's go to the ER. That's what you do.
Yep. You go to the ER. So that's the same thing, right? ER physician, PCP, it's all the same.
Yep.
I'm just
Yep.
kidding. No,
Exactly.
that's the shortages, I think, in general are just so bad. And I can't speak for any other state. I can only say in New Mexico, the provider shortages that we have out here in both the hospital and the pre-hospital system is nuts.
Yeah, and this is not the healthiest population either. This is a state that needs it pretty pretty bad.
Yeah, like I know. So my wife is seeing a rheumatologist, and that rheumatologist is based out of California. So we do all telehealth visits.
Oh, well, I guess that's the one thing, the good thing to come out of COVID, right? Is that
Yeah.
the telehealth aspect of it, really really blew up. But it's just I understand people's hesitation with wanting to do it. It's just not the same as getting like a physical evaluation
Yeah.
and being with that provider face to face. But at least she's able to get in. I'm glad she was at least able to see a rheumatologist.
Yeah, so it cut our time. We were looking at, well, they were talking about sending her out of state because she was in the hospital. And they said because they couldn't find any rheumatologists, so they wanted to fly her out. And I said, we are not going to fly her out. I will find her a rheumatologist. And I did. And it was a telehealth visit, but still, she's one of the better doctors that we've worked with previously. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, it's nice. I think one of the other things too that we're seeing is a move for like PAs and NPs in positions that we wouldn't have normally seen them in previously. When I
Oh yeah,
worked at
definitely.
yeah, when I worked at the hospital here, they weren't allowing PAs and NPs in the ER, but that's since changed since I left because of their shortages.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's really why our profession came to be, was a shortage of available physicians in the nation back in the 60s, I think. And yeah, that is the whole foundation and development of our profession as APCs, mid levels. So it's good that it's good to see it grow, and I'm glad to see it expanding out to different specialties too, because there really is a good pool of people that go into that mid-level, education and could do a lot for those specialties. I've seen a huge increase in a lot of them going into like cardiology and a lot in ICU as well, and a lot of the surgical services as well. There's, you see quite a few general surgery PAs. I had a buddy that I think he went into nephrology as a PA. So yeah, it's promising to see that, and hopefully that helps to lessen the burden on our physicians that just don't have the ability to see the patient volume that's demanding their services.
I agree, 100%. I think most of the providers my wife is seeing right now are NPs, or PAs, and she sees a lot. So I can't think of, I mean, her last primary care was a physician, and she saw him once before. I don't know, he either retired out or something. We ended up having to make another appointment for another PCP, but even that is a nurse practitioner now. So almost every position that we've gone to see for her has had nurse practitioners or PAs in those positions, which is really cool. I think that we can put them through a similar, you go through a similar college practice with PA and MP as a physician, just cut in half, but still providing a lot of the same levels of care, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I could understand some people's and even some physicians' hesitation about maybe having PAs and NPs in certain specialties. And I'll be the first to admit, the amount of hours that we spend both didactically and in the clinical portion of our training and education, it doesn't hold a candle to what residents and physicians have to go through. You know, they do come out of their education having seen thousands of cases, thousands of procedures, but I do think that a lot of that lack of experience can be made up on the job under the guidance of a good physician that is willing to, you know, kind of take those MPs and PAs and put them through the ringer and train them well, and they can get to that point for sure. Has your wife been pretty happy with the APC she's had experience with?
It's just nice because we get in a lot sooner than we normally would be.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So the treatment that
Very
she's
true.
needing, she's getting because we're able to see, mid-level providers instead of physicians.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that helps. And, you know, if it's something that mid-level doesn't feel comfortable with, they can always move it on up to, you know, whoever their attending is, which is nice. You know, there's a backup plan if it's something that, you know, we as a mid-level aren't comfortable with.
Sure.
So it's good to have that safety net there too.
And it's not just in, the mid-level providers that we're seeing this in, and I did discuss this in a different episode too. When I was working in the EMS system here, it was always an EMT and a paramedic, but they didn't have the staffing to support paramedics being on every rig. So they bumped it to like an ILS, so two intermediates or an intermediate and a basic.
Well, there's still a big EMT shortage, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
across the nation.
Yeah.
How bad is it in Albuquerque?
I can't speak 100% to it because I don't work in the 911 service anymore. But like I said, they switched from all ALS trucks to now ILS and some ALS trucks.
Oh, so that's currently.
Yeah.
Oh, no bueno, man.
But if you think of the call volume that we're getting too, like I don't know, probably I'm purely speculating numbers here, but probably 75% of the call volume is BLS patients.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, anybody that say I work at this a couple standalones as well,
Mm-hmm.
in Albuquerque, and yeah, very rarely am I asking for critical care transport or ALS. So yeah, that's a good point. You're absolutely right. Almost everything that I transfer out is usually BLS.
And how do you feel transferring out BLS patients? Especially like if you're flying them, right? If you're flying, do you think that justifies our services?
On the flying side, where I work, I do, just because like the BLS moves that we do is like a kid with appendicitis that is at a clinic in the middle of nowhere, and there's no EMS ground crew that can make that transfer. You know, in a more densely populated area that maybe has a more robust EMS system, I'd be, I don't think a air ambulance company would accept accept that flight. But yeah, I could see circumstances where yes, it would be, it is needed. And again, that's primarily related to like rural healthcare. But we have moved some stuff where I'm like, what are we doing for real? These people can drive there. I mean,
Yeah.
oh yeah, flying the ingrown toenail to El Paso or whatever
Yes.
for the special podiatrist, the family friend podiatrist that they wanted to remove it.
Yes. It is funny. The way we're shaping our healthcare services now is quite interesting. The debates in because I'm on a few social media pages where people discuss that, like why are we flying so many BLS patients? Well, we're doing it because they need to be moved. It's not whether they need to be moved; they need to be moved. It's how we're going to move them, and that just like we've talked about already, there's just so many shortages in EMS right now. Like one of the locations that we go out to really regularly on a reservation, they only have 3 or 4 trucks in their entire reservation running 911 calls, and they're 48-hour shifts, and they're running 48 calls in those 48-hour shifts. They don't have time to transport their patients, from the reservation to Albuquerque, where it's a 3, 4, 5 hour drive. They can't take an ambulance out of service for that long. And then you're going on with EMTs who have no sleep. You want to take them out and put them on a long haul drive like that, even if it's as simple. We don't have the MRI, and we're not sure what this is. We'll send them out. Those people need to be moved, and some flight providers are upset by that because it is a BLS, but it does need to happen.
Yeah, I think there's a timing component to it, and like a disease progression component to it as well. Yes, at this time this is a BLS patient, but in maybe a day this appendix is going to rupture and it's going to
Yeah.
become an ALS move. So
Yes.
I dedefinitely understand it from there.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, do you have any memorable calls or patients that you want to discuss?
Yeah, you know, before you asked me about what I did to kind of improve and start coming to terms with my behavioral health issues, and I could tell you what really started it. And I guess to preface that, last July I had come back from another deployment.
You're
Because why not,
crazy,
right?
man. You're out all
Again,
the time.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know, same mindset. Be like, well, this one will change everything, right? Um, and when I came back, it was kind of just a really shitty series of events. There was a lot of good things that had happened. I got married. I started a new job. But kind of on the not so good side, I had an uncle pass away rather unexpectedly and suddenly. I had an old girlfriend pass away from a motorcycle accident, and then a couple months later, her daughter passed away as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And then yeah, so just a lot of bad stuff going on. An old childhood friend, my age, he's 30, 38, passed away from colon cancer. And I was coming back from work on one of the rural roads. It was like a two lane road, and it had been a long shift, and I just wanted to get home. And came across an intersection where there was an SUV that had obviously been struck by this big white utility vehicle. It looked like it had rolled over a couple times, and just kind of bodies everywhere and people standing around on their phones, everybody like calling 911 at once. And so I drove past it, looked at it, didn't see any first responders. Nobody was on scene there yet. Nobody was doing anything. So you could tell just by like the people that were around, nobody with any sort of medical training. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I should stop at this. Like, I really want to get home. And I really, is there a liability issue with it? And then I maybe made it 400 meters past it, and I was like, what the hell am I doing, man? Like, the whole reason I got into this profession is to help people that I just passed back there. And if you keep driving, then you're lying to yourself about why you did this. And so I turned around, and it was a mass cal. It was a true mass casualty incident. In that SUV, it was a mom and her sister. They were both about middle aged females, and then the mom's three children that were like 13, 9, and 3. And every single one of these patients had something going on with them that you would be worried about some major trauma. It looked like one had a femur fracture, one had a hip fracture, one was having abdominal pain, and then the 3-year-old girl who was next to her mom had a pretty bad head injury, and it's always hard to tell with 3-year-olds, but seemed to have some changes in mentation as a result of it. And so did a quick, rapid mass casualty triage, trying to figure out who's really the worst off. And really that little 3-year-old seemed like the worst off. And again, still no EMS around. So did what I could with the med kit out of the back of my truck, and had started giving orders to people around. To make a long story short, what really got to me was as I was taking care of that 3-year-old little girl, the mom, she grabbed onto my leg and said, please, please, please don't let my little girl die. And again, I think what really gets to me about this stuff is not the trauma or the gore, is putting yourself in that patient's perspective And I just felt her heartbreak and her concern, and you could tell she just would do anything to make sure that her little girl was okay. A month prior to that, my wife had become pregnant, and so I just really empathized and sympathized with this woman. And I don't know the outcome. Eventually, EMS got there, and I helped them load, and I think the UNM Life Flight folks showed up, but then they couldn't take off because it started snowing.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
but when everything was done, they were sent off. There was a sheriff there, and I just realized it was kind of me just standing next to this SUV. It was almost like being in a dreamlike state. It was a very weird and eerie sensation. And I drove home, uh, got in the shower, and just started bawling, started crying. Um, and that was really combined with kind of those other things that had happened when I got back. That really was the event that kind of flipped a switch and initiated a decline into a real depressive state. I really didn't want to go out and do anything, became more reclusive. I just had no relationship with my wife. I just wanted to be alone. I slept a ton. All I did was work and sleep. That was pretty much it. And I wasn't telling my wife anything about what was going on. And it really impacted our relationship in a negative way. And keep in mind, my wife is pregnant. This is a time where she needs me more than ever. And I just kept pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, and not doing anything about it. And it's frustrating being a healthcare worker and going through something like that because in your head, you're going through the DSM criteria. You know exactly what's going on. Uh, but it's like there's a mental block there that just stopped me from doing anything about it. And it was very strange. I knew I needed to do something. I could see, this downfall occurring. And eventually it got to the point where my wife was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm thinking about leaving you. And my pregnant wife was going to leave me.
Oh my
It got
goodness.
that bad. And that's what it took for me to open up to her about what was happening and what I was dealing with. And that was the next week I called the VA Helpline, and that's when I started getting the help that I needed. And I mean, what a day and night difference once I got it off my chest. That was a big part of it. And once I again started taking care of myself and getting help and treating my disease, because it's a disease, it changed things immensely. And so yeah, that incident will always be ingrained in my head because that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Sure.
That's the one that really sent me into that dark place. And again, not terribly gory, not in, I mean, it was traumatic, but more emotionally traumatic than maybe, that guy that got blown up in that Humvee. So yeah, that's one that really sticks with me.
Yeah, that sounds like a notable one. And I think it sounds like a high stress one, especially if you were the only provider in the few instances that I've stopped on a car accident or something that we've noticed where somebody needs help. It's usually the podiatrist or the gynecologist that stops and says, I'm a doctor. What can I do for you? And you're like, what are you?
Yeah,
I
I'm a
appreciate it,
doctor of
but
mathematics and I'm here to save the
yes,
day.
exactly. I have my PhD in, literature, whatever. So it's good that you did stop, and it's good that you recognized in yourself, that you did stop. But there's been a lot of recognition in how hard and how much stress these jobs are putting us under. And I don't know how to change it. What do we do? Do we limit our exposure by limiting our shifts? Do we limit our exposure by only allowing people in EMS for so long before we clip them out? How do we fix this problem?
Oh, I know that is, I think part of the difficulty in addressing that is everybody's experiences vary. And
Yes.
what causes you or I trauma, emotional trauma, may not have any impact on somebody else. And everybody's brain chemistry is so different. and different techniques to help in the healing process and to help treat don't work for everybody either.
Yeah.
I think in our industry, I think the most basic place to start is allowing or having a system in place for de-stressing after difficult calls, and I'm very fortunate in that the employer I work for now, I have no doubt in my mind that if my partner and I had a really bad call and we got back and we couldn't get over it, they would take us off and give us the time that we need to, again, de-stress, debrief, talk about it, get it off our chest, and then come back up when we're ready.
Right. And that's great.
But not every agency is like that.
No, but I also think, like you mentioned earlier, not every call is that affects you is going to have gore or trauma, and so I think that giving our providers the education, like the emotional intelligence to be able to say, you know what, that call really bothered me and it wasn't anything crazy. I don't know why it bothered me so bad. You had that emotional connection, you gave yourself to that patient, and maybe somebody looking from the outside wouldn't think, hey, I should go check on them because that was a hard call. Nobody's going to say that. So I think, like I said, giving our providers the emotional intelligence to be able to be like, hey, that was rough on me. I need somebody to talk to, and I need somebody to talk to now, and then providing them the resources to do that would probably be a good step in a good first step in the right direction.
Yeah, and that training is out there, but I have yet to meet anybody that's gone through it. Like I think NAEMT offers a course on how to offer or conduct services like that and how to deal with that emotional trauma and work specifically with providers on that aspect of the job. But I've I've never known anybody that's gone to it. I think there's such an emphasis on people to, if they're going to do training, it's going to be, you know, your certification to teach ACLS or PALS or some sort of, driver's course or something like that. So, what it may take is some type of federal law that every EMS agency needs to have at least so many, one person per so many employees that is available and trained, uh, specifically on de-stressing techniques for providers. But yeah, that's going to take lobbyists. It's going to take money.
Yeah.
It's going to take time.
Yeah, a lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of time. Well, hopefully we'll get there eventually.
I hope so. I think they would. I think agencies would see the benefits in it in retention and a longer shelf life for pre-hospital and even in-hospital providers.
Yeah.
I think you would make your money's worth in having that available, and you know, it would pan out that way, I think.
I agree. And not just, I, it's hard to say, but not just having them available through telehealth, but having the option to go to an office or to have an in-person come in. But that would also require having that person to be able to come in. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely.
we're already having such a mental health shortage that's just not, I don't think it's very feasible right now.
Yeah. Did you ever get to a point of burnout in your career? I'm sure I mean, over 20 years, I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
you've kind of hit those marks.
You can talk to a lot of people. Yeah, I've burned out. I've burned out quite a bit. Honestly, moving into flight was nice because it gave me the opportunity to only work one job. Where, as I'm sure you know, as an EMT, I was having to work 3, 4 jobs just to keep up. So coming to flight has has been amazing for me and has given me the opportunity to do things that I want to do outside of work, which is podcasting or metal detecting, coin collecting, like doing the things that I really want to do where I didn't have time to do that before. And it's also pushed me to grow in my profession, getting my FPC certification in the last couple of years and going for more certifications that I wasn't able to go for before too. So burnout is a real thing. And I tell people all the time, is that overtime shift worth it? It's not. Missing that family time, not worth it.
No, I 100% agree. That's been the nice thing about my flight job as well is it's a 96-hour shift and then 12 days
Oh,
off.
that's gross.
And so again,
96 hours, though, that's so long. Oh,
it is, but it's having those 12 days on the back end is so nice for all the same reasons. It's definitely improved my mental health having that time to spend with family and do the things I want to do. What's the weirdest thing you found metal detecting? You gotta have found some really weird stuff.
so my so my brother-in-law, the gentleman that's on the other line, kind of making sure the audio sounds good. We actually went down to the Rio Grande River, and we were metal detecting right underneath a bridge. he, he found it rang up really weird, but he dug it out, and it ended up being a corset, and it was real
Oh,
creepy, like really creepy. We left immediately because we were afraid we were going to find a body next. We're like, nope, we're leaving. That's it.
I'm more curious to like how it got there. Who was
Yeah,
walking on that bridge? It's like I've had it with this thing.
I don't want
That's
to
it.
know.
I'm done with it. Or what was going on under the bridge?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it was what's going on under the bridge. Oh boy, gotta love Albuquerque, man.
Yeah, yeah. No, we've found a couple of silver coins and some old, pennies, and I love metal detecting, man. I just have a blast. It's one of my favorite things to do.
I could see the draw to it for sure. You haven't found any guns yet, huh?
No, no guns, but we never went back to the bridge after that. So I'm sure I was
That's
actually
probably a good idea.
yeah, I was actually telling my wife right now would be a good time to go metal detecting because the river is so low, that like huge
Oh
parts
yeah.
of the river where you couldn't get to before because of the water is just available. So most of the spots you want to look for those bridge areas, you probably find a lot of really cool and really crazy stuff.
Awesome. Well, I hope you continue to find weird stuff.
Thanks. I do some gold panning too, and I really enjoy gold panning on the side as well.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
very cool. Yeah, I had a buddy that was really into that.
Yeah, there's not a lot to find out here, but when you do find even just a little piece of gold, like you get so excited.
That's good. You got those hobbies that are kind of non-work related and
Yes,
just something you can do that's so completely different. I think it's super healthy to have those.
I agree.
Not everything has to be medicine or whatever
No.
your occupation is.
Yeah, and the more that I do it, the better I feel. It's just nice to get out and to do things that aren't involved with medicine. That also goes into that like hypervigilance, right? There's still times where like in large crowds I don't tolerate it very well, because I can't keep an eye on
Hmm.
everything that's happening at that time, you know. It can be
Yep.
a
Oh,
little
I
much.
I know. Yeah, I know exactly what that feels like. What I think is interesting. It sounds like your hobbies are like almost very meditative. I would imagine like the constant kind of circling of the gold pan or
Hmm.
the going back and forth with the metal detector. It sounds very meditative.
Yeah, my wife calls them my old man hobbies. She just doesn't see the pleasure in it.
Yeah.
That's all.
Hey, look what I found over here.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, you don't have to show me everything. I'm like, come on. Well, Andy, I really appreciate you coming on today. It's been a great conversation. I love when I can just hang out, especially with people that I've never, met or hung out with before, and I get a good side of who you are and what you do.
No, it was. I am so happy and honored to be on your show, and I hope there's some takeaways from it, and I guess kind of to end it, I just hope people know that really nothing will get better until you make a change or have a support system that helps you make a change, and also know that recovery is not always quick,
Yeah.
and time doesn't heal all wounds. So I appreciate the format that you've developed and the platform, and thanks so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And you've offered a lot of really good, unique perspectives that we haven't seen yet. And you've reinforced a lot of the ones that we have talked about, which is, it's nice. It's nice. Again, we want providers to know that you're not alone. This is a safe place. Feel free to reach out if you need to. Again, join the Facebook group page where other people get to go on and to share their stories and have that support and feel good. And if you don't feel good, let's figure it out so that you do.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, I'll see you at Millionaire.
Yes. I'm sure we will see each other again. Andy, thank you so much. I hope you have a good day, man.
You too, Sal.
Thank you for listening. Before we wrap up, we have a few important announcements to share with you. Firstly, we're excited to announce the launch of our brand new 911 Nonsense Facebook group page. It's a community where everyone can go to connect, share ideas, discuss topics from the show, and get all of the most recent updates about the podcast. We'd love to have you join us and be part of the conversation. Next, we want to ask you to rate and review our podcast on your preferred platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach a wider audience. By rating and reviewing the show, you'll be supporting us in a big way and helping others discover 911 Nonsense. If you enjoy what we do and would like to support the podcast even further, we have a few options available. You can visit samspursuit.com to find the links to our 911 Nonsense merch page and our recently released Noon gear page. Every contribution, no matter the size, goes a long way in helping us continue to better the podcast. We know that not everyone is comfortable being on the podcast, but we still want to hear your stories and experiences. If you have a compelling story and would like to share it to be read by me in a future episode, please reach out to us via email at 911nonsense@gmail.com or through our website's contact section. If you choose to be anonymous, we'll make sure to respect your privacy while sharing your story in a way that resonates with our audience. Thank you again for tuning in. We truly appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more engaging content in the future. See you next week.